Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Secretary and General Bostic, for all of your work. There's no state that's more dependent on the good work of the Corps than Louisiana. And of course, Hurricane Katrina underscored that, and thank you in particular for historic, important work post-Katrina that made the directly impacted area far safer than the day before Katrina. The last WRDA 2007, was a big part of that direction and of that work. But there are some aspects of implementation of that, as I suggested at the beginning, that I'm very, very frustrated about. And in the spirit of fixing those problems for the next WRDA, which we're going to produce, I want to focus on that. My biggest frustration is really that the Corps ignores mandates from Congress when it chooses to, when it doesn't want to do certain things. And I think that's really inappropriate. Madam Secretary, I assume you recognize, both in terms of common sense use of the language and legal language, that there is a fundamental difference between a provision which says you may do this and another provision which says you shall do this. Is that fair to say?
Yes, Senator.
Yeah, I think it's universally understood, including in legal language, may is discretionary, shall is mandatory. And yet the Corps has ignored several shalls in WRDA 2007 because it clearly just doesn't want to do those things. For instance, with regard to the Louisiana Coastal Protection and Restoration Report, that was mandated, and specifically in WRDA 2007, Section 7014 says, quote, the Secretary shall submit to the maximum extent practicable specific project recommendations. So the idea was not just to do a nice general report coming out of Katrina, but that it would include specific project recommendations that could be fast-tracked coming out of this disaster. As you know, the Corps has not submitted a single specific project recommendation pursuant to that. Do you think that's a fair interpretation of that mandate?
Senator, I believe under the LCA that we came up with a suite of projects. However, the ultimate recommendation for going forward was not a recommendation of a particular project in that instance.
So again, you're confirming what I said. You all submitted no specific project recommendations, even though that was mandated, at least to the maximum extent practicable. Do you think it's reasonable to take that language and do nothing in terms of specific project recommendations?
Senator, we make project recommendations when we have a cost-sharing sponsor for a project, and that was not the case in many of these.
Oh, I can line up many cost-sharing sponsors in Louisiana for what we're talking about. That was not an issue. That was absolutely and is absolutely not an issue. Are you considering, at this late date, making specific project recommendations pursuant to that language?
Are we currently considering making recommendations? Correct. Not that I'm aware of, but it is something that we can revisit with.
Okay, well, I just point that out as a pretty obvious example of what I'm talking about. Another one is the Louisiana Coastal Area Comprehensive Plan. Again, in WRDA 2007, you were mandated, shall submit a comprehensive plan to Congress. To date, the Corps has not done any LCA comprehensive plan. There's a Chiefs report, there's LACPR, you were mandated to put those together, submit a comprehensive plan, clear mandate. Why hasn't that been acted upon?
I believe that the combination of the two is something that has not been funded.
Well, I mean, through the generosity of the American people, through active Congress, we've sent billions of dollars down there related to this. Billions of dollars. There is a Chiefs report and an LACPR. All you have to do is put the two together for a comprehensive plan. So what does it take to do that?
Well, I want to just double check. I believe that the president requested it in both his 12 and 13 budget, and it would be considered a new start, but it has not been funded.
Well, quite frankly, this is a game we play all the time. When the Corps doesn't want to do something, you say, we need a specific line of authorization, even though there are billions of dollars in this area. When the Corps wants to do something that doesn't have a specific appropriation line, you do it. So again, you're picking and choosing. Not every discrete action takes a specific authorization line. There are billions of dollars in this area that fully cover that. Let me just go to a final example of ignoring mandates, in my opinion, that touches on what Senator Boxer was talking about for West Sacramento. For crediting, there are two provisions in the law, as you know, Section 104 and Section 221. They both exist. They're for different times of a project, different applications. The Corps used to use both of them appropriately. More recently, you issued a decision that says we're never going to use Section 104. Now, not coincidentally, that section is more helpful and more generous to the locals. So you're saving money doing that. What has Congress done to make you think that Section 104 has gone away and does not exist? Because we did not repeal it.
When the Congress amended Section 221 in the Word of 2007 bill, it gave a different crediting scenario, including that the crediting could be applied to all projects. Section 104 was limited to just flood control projects. So in looking at that amendment to Section 221, the application of credit can now be more widespread among all of our programs. And it also recognizes by saying that credit will be afforded to a local sponsor once the project has gone through the draft feasibility stage, gives us a point in time to measure whether or not that federal project will be have federal benefits in order for us to afford the credit, because it has to be proven to be an integral to the project in order for us to be able to give the credit down the road to the local sponsor.
Well, I'll wrap up, and hopefully we can come back to this, but I just note that Section 221 did not repeal Section 104. And again, you're just choosing to read it that way because it's to your advantage. But I'll follow up. Thank you, Madam Chair.